Welcome to another fun-filled Friday edition of Second City Sports. We're live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss McKee, which is she. I am Cindy Brownhead. That's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can find Akina McGee on the Twitter and Akina's going to get on the IG.
Make sure you download the Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. You want to know why? Because we said so, that's why. And also, so you can catch up on our other live shows we have airing throughout the week. So you happen to miss them, you can go back and listen to them and watch them at your own leisure, especially during this extended full holiday weekend for many of you. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app today. Speaking of Sports Zone Chicago, you can follow us on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Please subscribe to our podcast. We're at War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. We are on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And speaking of War Media, give them a follow on all social media platforms at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, that's at War Media, WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends. These are for me to
say. We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinions during our 2-hour extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show, you can always hit us up in the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions and comments in the comment section. Lakina will get up on the screen for you. But you decide to troll and or do something silly or stupid, I've given Lakina full power to give you fools to bill and be a boot.
Bye-bye.
But before we begin, we must remind you, you also catch Sports Zone Chicago on Roku TV. That's right. So celebrate with the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now on Roku TV. If you already have a Roku television, just tap on that sports folder and download that Sports Zone Chicago app. If you don't have a Roku TV, but you have some handheld devices laying around, iPhone, iPad, iTouch, your Chromebook like I'm using right now, or your personal PC like Lakina's using right now, just head over to that Google Play Store, download that Roku TV app, and access Sports Zone Chicago through that avenue. So no more excuses. Celebrate with the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV.
Anytime, anywhere.
And you know we will provide.
Yes, always. We always do. So yeah, so we got a busy show for you guys today. Of course, we'll talk MLB as the White Sox are back to where they were about a month ago. The Cubs get a little bit of a setback, after a sweep against the Phillies. Of course, we got a perfect game in baseball for the first time in years. Also, too, the crazy stuff in the NBA, massive cuts over at ESPN. Luce from OnTaskSportsNet.com will join us for the first time to talk Chicago sports. Connor Bedard, well, we're going to talk about it all right here today in a busy show. So let's get right to it and talk some local baseball.
Yes, the Chicago White Sox, as you mentioned, they are currently 2-2 on their current 7-game West Coast road trip. They defeated the Anaheim Angels yesterday by the score of 9-7. They overcame a 4-run deficit by scoring 6 runs in the third inning. 2 RBI by Zach Remillard, I should say. Eloy Jimenez had a couple of RBI as well. They survived another mediocre, at best, using air quotes here, start by Lance Lynn. I'm about sick of him. But anywho, the White Sox offense has woken up, Lakina, over these last 2 games. They scored 11 runs on Wednesday, 9 runs yesterday as they take down the Angels. Shohei Ohtani took them down on Tuesday, hitting 2 home runs and striking out in double-digit fashion. But the White Sox bounced back nicely to gain and splitting that 4-game series. Now they head to Oakland for 3 games this weekend. As Lakina mentioned, Oakland made history. We'll tell you about that on the other side. But regarding this White Sox team, Lakina, we said this all year long. They're led by their starting pitching. And despite what happened yesterday, and despite what happened early in the series against the Anaheim Angels, this White Sox team, their bats have woken up tremendously. Hopefully that continues this weekend against Oakland.
So basically, they're exactly where they were about a month ago, right? They're 4.5 back. I mean, we had this I feel like we've been having this conversation for like the last month or so. Like, okay, yeah, okay, the Twins. We'll talk about the Twins after the break. But
Mhm.
it just feels like we've been singing this song. I've been repeating this for like the last few times, and I'm at that point where I'm like, okay, wait for me when they actually gain ground because I'm hearing people say, oh, the Sox are back. They split with the Angels. Okay, yes, yes, Otani scored, struck out like the 11 and had 2 home runs and whatnot. But I think, look, he's a 6 pitcher with 10 Ks and 2 home runs in a single game since the mound moved to its current distance all the way back in 1893. And also to so it's a little bit crazy that they were able to survive that. I think Shohei has like 7 runs against the home runs against the White Sox. Okay, yeah, that's nice. Okay, like Luis Robert Jr. had a couple home runs, and okay, like okay, give me a reason to care because I feel like like I said, we've been having the same conversation for the last month with this team. I'm hearing like, oh, the Sox are back, the Sox are this. So like, well, you're back, you're exactly where you were about a month ago. We had the same conversation. So like, wait for me when they actually do something because knowing this team, yeah, you split with the Angels, but you may end up losing 2 out of 3 to the A's, who are probably not going to be in a very. I know they're not very good, but after what happened with the Yankees, we'll get to that after the break. But I'm like, okay, moving on.
Well, the offense is back, at least for the last 2 games. Let's see, as I said, they could keep that momentum up in Oakland, who is the worst team in baseball. But the starting pitching has held up. The bullpen has been shaky these last few games, but it's still been pretty good over the last month. So it's time for the offense to continue to snap out of it. Like I said, they've done it the last 2 games. Tim Anderson finally got off the schneid yesterday. We'll see if he can keep it up. I think this is a big stretch for him in terms of if the Sox should try to make the playoffs or not, or if he gets traded around this time in about another 4 or 5 weeks from now. But you're starting to see this offense come around. Like you mentioned Eloy, you mentioned La Pantera, Luis Robert, you mentioned Sebi Zavala, the best 9-hole hitter in Major League Baseball. He had a couple of home runs in that series against the Angels. So things are looking up offensively for the White Sox. As we said before, pitching does beat good hitting, but sometimes your pitching, especially good starting pitching, can only hold up for so long. You got to have other areas to pick you up. Right now, it looks like the Sox offense is picking up that pitching staff. Like I said before, I'm not saying the White Sox as a team is back yet, but it looks like their offense is back. Let's see if they can pound the Oakland A's this weekend. They need to sweep this series.
Which will probably not happen, knowing how this.
Don't you put that bad juju out there?
Well, look, you know how this team is, Sid. I mean, look, they again, they win like 2 out of 3 against or split a series. They end up losing 3 out of 4 or 2 out of 3. So I have no faith in this team. Look, I say, wake me when they actually do something. I know Bob Nightingale put out there, hey, they're 4.5 back. Well, and like, okay. Again, it just shows you that the division's comical. They're still like 11 games under 500. So. Again, wake me when they actually do something. Yeah, look, it's great to see Robert, what he's done. I know Vaugh's been pretty solid. Romelar's been very good too. It's been a nice, story for them so far. Again, wake me when they actually do it consistently. Then maybe I'll care. Now let's go to the north side real quick. Fortunately for the Cubs, they lose a heartbreaker, after being swept by the Phillies 3-1. Just the pitching has been, was okay, but the hitting just wasn't there. And the Phillies are like one of the hottest teams in baseball right now. So unfortunately, you caught them at a really.
We told you to watch out for them.
Yeah, I mean, Schwarber, of course, I'm sure he loves playing at Wrigley. Being able to come back to Wrigley and hit a couple home runs he did in this series. So it gets a little even tougher for the Cubs. I mean, they got to play the Guardians starting tonight. I mean, today I should say. So I'm not. They're still 5 back. I should say. So I'm not gonna cast them aside just yet. We'll see. I know Schwarber's probably going to miss a start because of that blister, but I'm not giving up on the Cubs yet because I feel like look, they just got like a tough break as a very hot team.
Yeah, as we said about the AL Central, Lakina, I think, which is more comical. The NL Central is a bunch of parity, mediocre teams as best as well. Milwaukee, we'll tell you what they did following this timeout, but. Yep. The Pittsburgh, it looks like they're starting to bounce back after that hard start in their recent stretch of losing. You look at the St. Louis Cardinals, they're struggling this year. In Cincinnati, they're a surprise of the division this year. Can they keep it up? We shall see. But the Cubs, because of their great starting pitching and their offense until this past series, the offense is starting to heat up. So with that very good starting pitching, and if the offense can pick it back up, they're in this thing. So if you're a Cubs fan, you shouldn't give up hope just yet. You're right there because the rest of the teams in that division are not good. Now, as far as the pitching in this past series against the Philadelphia Phillies went, Jameson Taillon, he wasn't that bad. Drew Smiley was terrible on Wednesday. And, of course, Kyle Hendricks, he pitched well last night. It's just that the offense did not back him up.
Yeah, I think that was sort of the thing. I mean, look, he did what he was supposed to. I mean, I think he is starting to kind of get back to the, to the Hendricks. Unfortunately, he got the loss, but unfortunately for him, I guess they did the offense didn't pick it up. I know Morel didn't have a good series, and this year, in this Philly series, Bellinger had his struggles, Swanson had his struggles, so did Ian Happ. So unfortunately, the hitting didn't help Hendricks. I mean, he only gave up 3 runs, and that was only early on. But it just wasn't there for him. And I think they had a couple of chances about the Cubs to perhaps maybe make it a little bit interesting, but they weren't able to do that. So, there was like a bunt that people are already questioning David Ross with the bunting and bunted with what I mean. It's just a little bit crazy how all this is sort of like Cubs fans are. But like you said, I mean, they're still in that division. I know, the AL Central is Congo, but the NL Central is just as bad. So. But I mean, they're still right there, and I kind of feel like, look, you need more hitting help. You need middle relief help. I mean, the middle relief actually was okay this series, but like I said, the offense just wasn't there, unfortunately.
Yeah, previewing the series against the Cleveland Guardians. Since we have a couple of minutes left before we break for the bottom of the hour, as of right now, Justice Steele will pitch today's opener in less than an hour from now. Of course, tomorrow, as of right now, Marcus Stroman will pitch. That's a part of the Fox Saturday night baseball game of the week tomorrow, and we'll give you the rest of the schedule on the flip side. And of course, for a Sunday's game, if I can get it up here, I think if I can get it up here, because the Cubs starting rotation, it actually sets up well for them in this series. They can hopefully, if you're a Cubs fan, take 2 out of 3. Jameson Taillon will start the Sunday afternoon affair against Aaron Savali. So the Cubs is still going to face a good team in Cleveland, even though they're under 500 as well in their AL Central Division race. But I could see the Cubs taking 2 out of 3 from the Guardians. They just got to get that offense back on track. Could you say it was a jet lag situation coming from London, even though they did get Monday off? Or was the Phillies just that damn good? I think it was a combination of the two, but I think Philadelphia just outplayed them in every phase of the game.
Right, and also too, like you said, I mean, we're dealing with bad air quality here in Chicago, so you got to think, the Phillies played through it like a couple of weeks back, but now that it's going to be interesting. We'll see what happens because they can't use that excuse anymore. And like you said, it could have been. They probably should have gotten 2 days off. I feel like instead of just 1. But I digress. Coming back all the way back from London. I mean, I don't know, but hopefully they'll figure it out. Hopefully, if you're the Cubs, and I know Sox fans are be cheering for the Cubs, whether they like it or not. You hope they get at least two out of 3 in that series. So hopefully they can kind of get it going here and get back on track. So, but yeah, like I said, I don't think no one's going to pull away from that division. So it is what it is, but. It should be interesting this weekend in this series with the Guardians.
Yes, we have baseball history to talk about. Could we see a couple of people be given their pink slip and link cards? And we have some offensive numbers and some pitching numbers to give you guys. And of course, we'll switch to the hardware to talk about NBA free agency as things are starting to heat up there as officially free agency starts later today. You're listening to Second City Sports, the Friday edition. I'm Sid, that's Lakina. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I needed for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class. These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to Second City Sports on this fun Friday Fun edition. We're live in living color right here in Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at CK80. Once again, it's CK80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You can follow Makita McGee on the Twitter and the IG.
We have less than 90 minutes left of this extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. You have any questions or comments for us, you can always hit us up in the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you.
All right, so probably one of the best moments of the week in baseball came from just a couple of nights back in Oakland as Domingo Germán became just the third player born outside the United States to pitch a perfect game in MLB history, joining Felix Hernandez, who last did it the last guy did it all the way back in 2012, and Dennis Martinez, who did it a few years ago. Back in the 90s. And also, too, he the fourth Yankee to pitch a perfect game, joined, of course, Don Larson, who, of course, did in the 56 World Series, David Wells in 98, and David Cohen right after that in 1999. And the Yankees also scored 11 runs, which is actually the most by a team in a perfect game in history. Just a great moment for him, and a great moment for that team. I know it was against the A's, but still, it's still something for the history books. And I know some people want to break up his, stuff that he was suspended earlier this season, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about what's going on the field, and he needs to, he needs to be congratulated for this accomplishment on the field, because it's very rare and historic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Lakina. First of all, 2 thumbs up to Ryan Rucco for a great call on the Yes Network on the Yankees TV. He fielded it from Michael K. But I got a chance to watch the final 2 innings live, and it was such a historical moment. I thought about the game 2 years ago. I think it's 2 years ago next month when Domingo Germán, he was in a similar situation against the Boston Red Sox in Fenway Park on that Sunday afternoon. The Yankees had a 5-0 lead. He loses a no-hitter. The Yankees lose the game, and he was after that he kind of, like you mentioned, been off and on, struggling a bit with injuries. Of course, he had the suspension, but his ERA before Wednesday night's game was around 9 runs a game. Of course, that's been brought all the way down with this performance. But It is a feat in baseball, which is very rare, and that's why it's very hard to do because everything just about has to go right. If you get a break or two, it has to go in your favor for you and your teammates and so. And that's why the game of baseball is such a beautiful game when it's done right because stuff like that rarely happens now. In other sports, when you see outstanding performances, yes, you give them a standing ovation, give them their props. But in baseball, you have to give players like this props because it's rare that you see a no-hitter or a perfect game because it rarely comes around that often.
Yeah, this is actually after them losing the opener, in that Oakland series. So, nice bounce back. Of course, Herman actually said that he lost his uncle over the weekend too. He taught him how to pitch and such. So that was you saw how emotional he got in the interview afterwards. But yeah, so look, I mean, like it's a rarity. It happens. It's kind of a rare feat in baseball. The perfect game, like you said, everything has to go right. Especially also your teammates have to make sure on the offensive side they give you a little bit of a cushion, and he did. He got 11-0. So it was just a really a great moment. And look. I mean, it's sort of one of those days where like it's history making, and look, you have to. It's the first no hitter and perfect game this year. Of course, we had some guys flirt with it a few times this year. Kyle Hendricks, and a few others, obviously. But yeah, I mean, look, it's crazy because he actually allowed 10 runs. Like you said, going back to that 9, he allowed 10 runs in his last start against the Mariners. So he's actually the first player to throw a perfect game after allowing such a big, amount of runs. He also that's actually, it's been like 3,969 games since, of course, when King Felix did it back in 2012. So that's how long it's been since we've had a no hitter. So, and a perfect game too. So yeah, just a really great moment, a great accomplishment, and congrats to him and the Yankees. The Yankees ended up winning 2 out of 3. So they scored 10 yesterday. So So it actually turned out to be a good series for them.
Yeah, no. You figured that the Yankees would have a day off yesterday, celebrating the no-hitter from the night before. No, like you said, they scored 10 runs yesterday. They take care of business, taking 2 out of 3 from the Oakland Athletics. Let's stay in the city of New York, Lakina, and go to the NL East, where the New York Mets continue to struggle. They're currently sitting at 36-44, 8 games under 500. They split a tough 4-game series against the Milwaukee Brewers. Lakina, the offense for the Mets, you could tell that it's starting to come through, but it's going back to struggles again. I know Mets owner Steve Cohen had a press conference the other day. He said he was open to suggestions, and it's just a big mess with the New York Mets right now. I think it's safe to say. I know it's tough because it's a long season, but I think it's safe to say the Mets should become sellers at the August 2nd trade deadline. I don't know about you, but I think the kind of writing is on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, the Atlanta's starting to pull away in that AL East. I mean, the Marlins are right there. They're kind of right there in striking distance, and the Phillies have been heating up lately. So I think you hate to say it, but you got to wonder, like, yeah, this is sort of like the thing where maybe they're 17.5 back in that NL East. So yeah, you got to think that's probably going to be it for them. So they probably are going to be sellers. Do they trade perhaps Verlander or Scherzer? With all that money that they invested. Who knows? But it's one of those things where you're kind of like, they had so much expectations, especially with the signing of Verlander. He started, not looking good early on. It's just like you feel for that whole team, and it's just like, I don't know. I mean, well, what do you do? I mean, it's just terrible. But it is what it is with the Mets, and yeah, they are probably going to end up being sellers at the trade deadline, and you hate to see that. And we'll see if Buck Showalter is gone. I don't think it's going to be gone this not till the season's over, especially if they don't finish well. But we'll have to wait and see.
Sticking with the NL East, Lakina, the Miami Marlins are 46-34. They're before last night's game. They had their best record to start in 81 games since. Can you guess?
The last time they won the World Series, I'm thinking, right?
You're half correct, but it wasn't 2003. It was 1997.
Oh, okay. That was
before last night's sweep of the Boston Red Sox. The Miami Marlins had the best 81-game start to a season since they won the World Series the first time back in 1997. I was watching their broadcast last night. It was, of course, the Marlins swept the Boston Red Sox. They had their first win on Tuesday in Boston since 2009. So it's been a long time since that Florida franchise won a game at Fenway Park. Lakina, we talk about Chaz Chisholm Jr., we talk about Sandy Alcantara, but the Miami offense has woken up big time. Luis Ariz, who had to play in an emergency position at first base yesterday due to Yuri Gurriel's injury during batting practice. So I know he's chasing 400, but I'm kind of starting to like this Miami Marlins team. I know we talked about them last year, Lakina. They were flirting around 500, but they just weren't there yet. We know that this the foundation of this team, of this organization, is built by starting pitching, but they can swing the bats with the best of them as well.
And Reyes just got named to a starter in the All-Star game his first time. So, yeah, that's for with that 400. But, yeah, like I said, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. Could they stick with the Braves in that division? We'll see. But I think they'll definitely be a player to get one of those wild card spots. So, yeah, I mean, they've got, like I say, Chaz Chisholm, Reyes, all those young players, of course, Alcantara, that he's somebody, fresh off a Cy Young. He's been still pretty solid. Probably not as dominant as he was during his Cy Young season last season, but he actually is still pretty solid and easily their best pitcher. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep it up. And we saw what happened last year. I mean, they were right there for until the last 6 or 7 weeks of the season. Of course, they end up falling off. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, sticking with the National League, with this other interleague series. Shout out to our guy Brandon Schutz in the chat. I see your messages, Brandon. The St. Louis Cardinals lose 2 out of 3 to the Houston Astros. The Astros defeated them yesterday by the score of 14-0. The Houston Texans beat the old St. Louis Rams.
Yeah, I'll say
by a football score yesterday. So we talk about the Houston Astros being in the AL West race with the Texas Rangers. We'll get to the Rangers in just a moment. But the Houston Astros, they've been struggling with injuries here and there, and a couple of injuries here and there where they're starting pitching. But their bats woke up the last 2 games of this series against the St. Louis Cardinals, scoring 10 runs on Wednesday and, of course, 14 runs yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, that Houston, you thought that maybe with all the injuries, the World Series, stuff, a little bit of a hangover. But they've done – look, I know that they only lost 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers last weekend, but you're winning 2 out of 3 against the Cardinals. They should definitely, especially scoring 14 yesterday. I saw that score. I'm like, oh, isn't that nice? The Oilers, or you want to say the Texans beat the Rams, or maybe you want to say the old Oilers team beat the Cardinals. I don't know, however you want to say it. But, yeah, however you want to say it. But yeah, I mean, there's just the bats definitely flowed yesterday, and they actually play Texas starting tonight. So could be interesting to see. Could be for control of the AL West, I should say. So should be interesting that series. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm liking what they've been doing. Kyle Tucker, who got, I think he'll probably definitely be a reserve for the All-Star game. Had a nice big show in the last couple of games. 3 RBIs, I should say, during that series. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. But yeah, I mean, look, it's gonna get to the point where it could end up being a 2-team race in that AL West.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Seattle, and of course Anaheim. They split their 4-game series with the Chicago White Sox. Texas, they still lead the division, but if they're not careful, their lead could be shrinking here pretty soon. Of course, they split their 4-game series. I'm talking about Texas against the Detroit Tigers. They lose a heartbreaker yesterday in the series finale to the Detroit Tigers. Their bullpen, I'm talking about Texas, and came unglued. Yeah. And as we talked about before, Texas has the offense, but it looks like they have the pitching to go with it. Dane Dunning had a good performance the other night. And, of course, Jacob deGrom, their star pitcher who they signed in free agency in the offseason, is done for the year with the Tommy John surgery. But give Bruce Bochy credit for keeping this team together, keeping them atop the AL West race. But we're not counting out the Astros just yet.
Absolutely. No, I wouldn't either. Of course, they are the defending champions for a reason. Now, going back to the NL East, the Braves have won 5 in a row. They swept the Twins. That's why, Sox fans are all liking a tizzy because, thanks to that, thanks a lot, Minnesota. Of course, you did. Just don't want to put the Sox out of their misery just yet. Okay, but
and Rocco Baldelli was pissed before yesterday's game.
Yeah, he should have been. Matt Olson. Matt Olson jacked up 400 mile. I don't think they found that ball yet. I don't think they have. Of course, completed that sweep. Of course, Ronald Acuna Jr. I mean, he's been just been hitting the ball consistently. He already reached 50 RBIs this year with his home run. In that first game, he joins Joey Morgan as the only player with 50 RBIs and 35 stolen bases before July, since RBI became an official stat all the way back in 1920. So I don't know if the Braves are going to run away with the NL West, at least like I said, but they're definitely going to make it a little bit harder. And it's going to be interesting because they play the Marlins starting tonight. Again, we'll talk about the series in a couple of minutes, but they're kind of making a case as to why that they've been, kind of right there the last few years, especially, of course, going out the World Series a couple of years ago and everything else. So so I think Atlanta is showing you that, look, we're here and we're not going anywhere.
I think it's the Braves versus everybody else in the National League right now because the Braves, I believe they have the best record for the month of June with only 4 losses in Major League Baseball. So they really have picked it up. We mentioned the Miami Marlins are not too far behind them. So it should be an exciting race in the NL East. So another team that needs to pick it up, looking at going back to the AL East, this is the Toronto Blue Jays. After being shut out in the first game, which they had a great performance out of Kevin Gausman. He struck out 12, but he had no help from his offense. The Toronto Blue Jays exploded for the next 2 games, scoring 10 runs on Wednesday, and they eked out a 2-1 win yesterday thanks to Vlad Guerrero Jr.'s home run yesterday, which turned out to be the difference in the game. Lakina, we talked about it before with this Blue Jays team. They have the offense, but they got to combat that with the great starting pitching. They did get that on Tuesday, but to no avail. But these last 2 games showed them what they really are capable of, if they can just stay consistent.
That's been the consistent. Their hit's actually been good, but like you said, that the pitching has been the big issue. And I'm hoping that maybe they'll be, they're still right there in the wild card. They're like right there. They're kind of right there in that wild card. They're kind of like right there in that last spot. But if you're the Blue Jays, you should be a little bit better. Like, no one thought that Tampa was going to get to the best start they had. They're still consistent. Baltimore's been very good. The Yankees are starting to kind of get put it together a little bit. Winning 2 out of 3 against San Fran, I think could definitely only help in that confidence, wise, especially for them. But I think they're capable of doing that. But they're gonna need some more starting pitching because that hitting, as great as it is, it can only do so much. So you're gonna need pitching, especially if you want to go far in the playoffs.
Yeah, sticking with the AL East, you mentioned we'll get to Baltimore in just a minute, but the Tampa Bay Rays, they continue their West Coast road trips. They take 2 out of 3 in Arizona against the Diamondbacks after losing the opener on Tuesday night. Tampa Bay won the last 2 games of the series. Like, as we talked about before, the Tampa Bay Rays are one of the best fundamentally sound teams in the league. The offense broke up these last 2 games. They have the great starting pitching. They have a great bullpen, but their bats are starting to come alive as well.
Yeah, and I think that perfect timing for them, I think. And so, I think we'll definitely see if they can keep it up. But again, I think they're definitely going to be right there in that division. So I don't know if they're going to run away with it, but they're making it very hard. They all got to play each other the second half of the season, so it could come down to like who really can it's going to be a slugfest in the AL East. So could be interesting. It's going to be will Tampa be able to hold on? Can Baltimore or the Yankees or even the Blue Jays overtake them? So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, speaking of Baltimore, they lose 2 out of 3 to the Cincinnati Reds at home earlier this week. Ellie De La Cruz for the Reds is starting to come through, Lakina, and some of the other young guys, Jonathan India and Joey Votto. We talked about his return to the lineup last week, and this Cincinnati team is fun to watch. And I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to make the playoffs for sure or win the division because I think that's unlikely, but they're an exciting, fun team to watch.
We'll see if they can keep it up now. Milwaukee, thanks a lot. Thanks for nothing, Mets. They went 3 out of 4. Now they're back in first place. But like I said, I don't think anybody's gonna run away from that division. We'll see if they can keep it up. The Dodgers had a nice week this week. They had 2 out of 3 from against the Rockies at Coors, and
they had a hailstorm last night.
Yeah, I know, literally a hailstorm. Yeah, 14-3. It was like I think they just hit another home run. Freddie Freeman had a couple RBIs. He's going back to the All-Star game as a starter. JD Martinez is also going back to the All-Star game as well. They were the leaders in that 14-3 shellacking after it was like a bunch of hail. We're having air quality issues here in Chicago. We've been having for like the last week, but but they had like a whole hail storm or something over there. So it was severe weather that hit the Denver area. So that's why they had to delay it for almost an hour, I think. But it didn't deter the Dodgers. They won 14-3, so it really didn't matter.
Right. The Washington Nationals take 2 out of 3 in Seattle against your Mariners. Lakina, Seattle still cannot get to that 500 mark. And the Pittsburgh Pirates, as we mentioned earlier, they sweep the San Diego Padres. I think I know what the Padres' problem is, Lakina. Their bullpen.
Yeah, well, that's been an issue for the last couple of years, and unfortunately, getting swept. I mean, like, my God. I mean, I know you thought that maybe they were going to figure it out. They started figuring it out, but other than that, they're kind of like the White Sox, a slightly better version of the White Sox. I mean,
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, like you thought that maybe they were going to get it going, but they didn't. Then they lose. Then they lose 2 out of 3 to the Nationals. Then they get swept by the Pirates. So you're like, what the heck is going on here? But look, Tatis has been doing his thing, ever since coming back from suspension. So, they also had air quality issues too over there yesterday too. Their game was delayed for about 45 minutes. So it's just like, I don't know what to say about the Padres. I don't know. It's a little nutty, but we'll see. They can figure it out, but I don't know if they can now.
And the Cleveland Guardians take 2 out of 3 in Kansas City.
Yeah, a little note there. And we're going to the schedule. Speaking of the Friday schedule, starting today, Friday. We talked about Cleveland, the Guardians, and the Cubs. They start pitching, at about 1:20. Then you got San Diego and Cincinnati. That should be interesting. We'll see if San Diego wants to get that taste out of their mouth for that Pirates sweep. Phillies, they're getting back going against as they host the Nationals. Minnesota and Baltimore.
Let's go O's.
Yeah, right. I know it's gonna be pretty hard for them. The first game, the Apple TV Plus doubleheader, sort of. The first game of that game will be in the NL Central. You got the Brewers and the Pirates. That should be a fun one. Another good one here: Boston and Toronto. They start their series. San Francisco and the Mets. Ugh, the Mets, yuck.
Yeah.
A good battle here in the NL East. You got Miami and Atlanta to start things off there. That should be a fun series.
Yes, and finishing out your Friday night schedule for the weekend in Major League Baseball, you have the Battle of Texas, looking at Houston at Texas, is kicking off tonight. That's going to be a good one. I'm gonna have my eye on that series too. Of course, you have the Dodgers and the Kansas City Royals, the Tigers and the Rockies. You may see some more strange weather issues there. Who knows? Of course, you got the Yankees and the Cardinals from St. Louis, a historical series. Of course, Aaron Judge may or may not be back. We'll see about that. Of course, you have Arizona at Anaheim tonight. That's the second game of the Apple TV Plus Friday night doubleheader. And, of course, you have Tampa Bay at Lakina's Seattle Mariners.
And on Monday, of course, as we're going to be off Monday because of the Independence Day holiday, let's get this schedule up here. You got of course, Houston Texans are going to be finishing off their series. The Cubs got a big one here against Milwaukee. The first game of that series will be on ESPN Plus. Then you got Cincinnati and Washington, St. Louis and Miami, Baltimore and the Yankees. To start things off there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Before we get to the actual games on Independence Day, your Fox Saturday. Your Fox Saturday night. Baseball schedule looks like this. Most of the country will get the Cleveland Guardians at the Chicago Cubs. That's at 6:15. Others will get Tampa Bay at Lakina's Seattle Mariners. And part of the country will get, this don't make no sense to me, excuse my broken English, but the LA Dodgers at the Kansas City Royals. Why?
That's a little bit weird. Yeah, that's a little bit odd.
That should have been Miami and Atlanta, but I digress.
Yeah, that's true. And of course, the Peacock game of the week, will be a good one. You got the Twins and Baltimore series. That's going to be at 11:05. And Sunday Night Baseball, you got the Giants and the Mets. I'm sure ESPN wish they could have flexed out of that one, but
Yep.
But yeah, so now going back to that, to this series coming up on Monday, you got Atlanta and Cleveland. That should be an interesting series. Kansas City and Minnesota. Angels and San Diego, Seattle and the Giants, and Pittsburgh and the Dodgers, I should say. The Dodgers.
Okay, and for Tuesday, 4th of July, your schedule looks like this. The Blue Jays will come to Chicago's South Side to face the White Sox. We have Cincinnati at Washington to take on the Nationals. Note that 10:05 Chicago time start. Of course, you have Baltimore at New York to take on the Yankees. The Cardinals at Florida to take on the Marlins. Texas at Boston, Kansas City at Minnesota. Of course, the Cubs and the Brewers will still do better. Battle. Colorado at Houston. The Mets at Arizona. Philadelphia and Tampa Bay. That should be a good one. Lakina, Seattle Mariners at San Francisco. Oakland at Detroit. the Angels at San Diego, of course, the Braves and the Guardians, and the Pirates will travel to LA to take on the Dodgers.
And that's your schedule for this 4th of July weekend in the MLB.
All right, you're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago on this Friday edition. I'm Sid, that's Lakina. Since we have a few more minutes to close out hour number 1, let's get into a little bit of free agency talk as we transition over to NBA. Lakina, the James Harden saga continues because he decided to pick up his option yesterday. Of course, the shooting guard star for the Philadelphia 76ers. It looks like he's going to stay there for now, but now it looks like he's going to request a trade, and a couple of teams are involved, including the famous West Coast team. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Portland. Yeah, Portland. They're already folks are saying that maybe they should trade Portland. Portland should trade Dame and Harden. I'm sure they're gonna have to make the money work too, and and such. Maybe a couple other, maybe add a pick as well for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it'll be too. And another team. Well, the Clippers actually too, but also too the Knicks. Those are kind of like the two main teams among them. So, salary cap wise, you gotta think if you're the Clippers, I don't know. Do you want to? You already got a player that they may have to do like a PG versus Harden switch. I don't know. I mean, New York. I know they got a lot of draft picks. I know they got a little bit of cap room. But do you try to maybe get? I don't know. Will Harden fit that system with? I'm serious. Will Harden fit that system with Tibbs? I don't know. I mean, but yeah. What do you think?
As far as the New York angle is concerned, I get the draft picks and I get some of the young assets that the Knicks do have. But like you said, offensively, it's not a problem for James Harden. But the problem is going to be on the other end defense. Tom Thibodeau preaches defense. We saw that firsthand here in Chicago over a decade ago. And you know that if you don't play defense for Tom Thibodeau, you're not going to get on the floor. And at this point in James Harden's career, I don't see him playing the lick of defense. Do you? I don't.
I don't. That's why I don't think it's not going to fit. It's not going to be a good
exactly.
fit. And as far as the Clippers are concerned, I mean, sort of the same thing. I mean, look, you already, PG, you think, of course, you get your trade PG and Harden, they switch places and work out the money and such.
I don't think that makes much sense either outside of economics.
Yeah, and so, that's a little bit odd to me as well. So, that's a little bit weird, especially since Harden, he's going to want his rest. And, of course, Kawhi, he still likes to get his rest. So, Tyronn Lue's going to have a little bit of an issue there. So I don't know. I know that there are a lot of Sixers fans that want Harden to perhaps maybe come in to go to Portland, perhaps bring on Dame, but I don't. It's can you see Dame going to Philadelphia and Harden going to Portland? I don't think that's not going to happen.
I don't see that happening either. But we talked about Damian Lillard perhaps being a fit for the Philadelphia 76ers, which I still believe is possible. But who does Philadelphia have to give up? I don't think they have too many draft picks left. I don't have the official vital signs in front of me, but I know they have a couple of good young players on this team. Shake Milton and others. Perhaps you could throw in Tobias Harris in that deal as well. But I think they have more than the Clippers do. So if that makes sense. But as far as I said earlier, the New York angle, I don't see that happening. I think more realistic is Portland. I know the Clippers will try to do a new big three because remember they're going to a new arena after next season, so they want to show their fans that they're still committed to winning. So plus Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are on the last years of their deals for next season as well. So I think common sense wise, I think Portland makes the most sense. I see why the Clippers want to get involved, but just trading Paul George for James Harden outside of economics, it just doesn't make basketball sense. Maybe I'm missing something, I don't know, but outside of economic reasons, I don't see it.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. We'll see as a saga of James. Where will James Harden go? I feel like I should have some music going there with a little James Harden, but but
where did you go, my loving? Oh, sorry.
Careful! We can't pay the royalties there, Sid. But
right.
Hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2 straight ahead. We got Ron Luce from. Excuse me, I can't talk today. So go ahead, take it, Sid.
Stay tuned for more sports and more fun as Second City Sports continues with Ron Luce from On Tap Sportsnet to talk Chicago sports and more. I'm Sid Desakino. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
I'm scared.
Do you know that you're in my lane? No, not at all. Are you not paying attention? Are you texting? I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6. It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention. I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up. My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention. It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Hi, I'm Tom Brady, the director of DODEA. September is National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. The simple act of reaching out and caring for those in our communities is something we all can do. Just being there for someone you care about can be a tremendous first step in getting them access to confidential resources and support that they need. It only takes one person and one small act and 1 minute to make a difference. Let's make a difference.
Many will hear the calling. Few will earn the title. United States Marine. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports, the Friday edition. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow Makina McGee on the Twitter and Akila's going to get the IG.
We have less than an hour left for this extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. If you have any questions or comments for us, especially for our next guest, you can always hit us up in the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. One of our goals for this year, Lakina, we talked about, we love our friends of the show or our contributors, but we like to bring new people along and give them exposure, perhaps give them a big jump start. And today we're back to doing that. He's making his debut right here on Second City Sports. He was on our guys show, Sean and Maya in the morning earlier today. He's making his Second City Sports debut. He could talk everything Chicago sports, from Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, Sox, and everything else in between. From On Tap Sportsnet, here comes Mr. Ron Luce. Ron, welcome to our show. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, guys. How are you guys?
We're doing good.
Doing well. You can follow Ron on Twitter at Luce on Tap. That's Luce on Tap. Once again, that's Luce on Tap, Luce on Tap. Ron, we've been talking about baseball for the last hour. We'll give ourselves a break, and we'll go to the one of the few good happenings in Chicago sports right now. It's the Chicago Blackhawks, of course, the worst kept secret in the history of Chicago sports. The Blackhawks had the number 1 pick in the NHL draft. They selected Connor Bedard. We'll ask you first before we break it down a little bit. What does this mean for the Blackhawks franchise?
It means the start of a new era, really, is what it is. It's, It's, a new star in the making here with Bedard. It's almost poetic in a little bit of ways, going from, Kane and Taves to now a new face of the franchise here in Connor Bedard. So it's a new era. It really is. It's just a new era of Blackhawks hockey now on the horizon with Bedard in the fold.
Yeah, they've actually made some other moves as well. Talk about the Blackhawks. They made a couple of trades, during that draft, and they got a veteran too. I'll get it going here, but Corey Perry, they got him, to come to the fold. So they're going to be surrounding Bedard with a lot of veteran guys. Now, I know it's still going to probably be a few years before they start contending, or perhaps maybe make the playoffs. So does the Bedard, being drafted, does that kind of like accelerate things a little bit, or no? Or is it going to stay, the plan's going to stay the same? What do you think?
I think the plan internally stays the same, but it absolutely does accelerate the rebuild. Anytime you can get what has been characterized as a generational player, that's always going to accelerate anything. And, he's very unique in the sense, it's not just another year of, you have the first overall pick and you took the best player available. Connor Bedard's been on the NHL radar since he was 14 years old. So, I mean, this guy's been being talked about since Connor McDavid was drafted. Even they were saying like, keep an eye on this kid. He's the next best thing since we've seen since McDavid. And now he's here, and it's much nicer to know he's going to be playing in an Indian head sweater than anywhere else.
Yes, that number 98 on that Blackhawks sweater never looks so good other than right now. As Lakina talked about the Corey Perry signing, I know some Blackhawks fans were upset yesterday. Remember, Connor Bedard has to have veterans around him to get him used to the NHL game, to get him used to carrying himself even further as a pro, both on and off the ice. But I want to ask you this, Ron, about another move that Cal Davidson made right before the draft. And that's picking up a former number one pick, Taylor Hall. Of course, he had his ups and downs throughout his NHL career, but as far as getting this program back on track, I'm not saying the Blackhawks are going to the playoffs next year because that's not in the plans, but I think this is another good veteran move to help Connor Bedard transition himself over to the NHL. What are your thoughts about the Taylor Hall move?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime that you have a guy that's going through the exact same, how do I put it? I guess footsteps as what Bedard is doing right now, it's good to have that in the fold. Taylor Hall knows exactly what it's like. He was the number one overall pick in 2011 or 2012 when he and Tyler Seguin were the top two off the board. He knows the pressure of playing in a big hockey market. Edmonton, despite being a small geographic market, is an insane hockey market. So, he knows what that pressure looks like as a number one overall pick. And having him in the fold, not just from that mentorship standpoint for Bedard and likely playing on his left wing, but also from a skill perspective. I think a lot of people forget what Taylor Hall has been because the last few years he hasn't been the star on any of the teams he's been on in the last 3 or 4 years. This is a guy that has a Hart Trophy. I mean, he's been an MVP. This isn't a guy that's just coming in and is like, he's okay. I mean, even as recent as 2 years ago, 21, 22, he was a 61-point player for the Boston Bruins. Had some injury trouble last year that kind of derailed his season, but had a really good playoff for them in those 7 games against the Florida Panthers. I believe it was 9 points in 7 games for Taylor Hall. So he's still getting it done. He's still relatively young, too. I believe he's only 31 years old. Great addition, and a guy that's not only going to help Bedard off the ice, but also is going to help Bedard on the ice as well.
I think having that mentorship around him, having a guy like Hall, a guy like Corey Perry, guys who have been around for a little bit, they can only help Bedard, especially like you said. So let's switch gears and talk, the other winter sports, the other occupant of Madison, the UC over there, the Bulls. They signed Vooch to a slightly lesser contract, 3 years, $60 million, only $20 million. Got a little bit of a kind of a discount. Of course, Andre Drummond actually opted in, so that was a little bit of a surprise. So, do you see AK and Mark Eversley making another big move that we're not expecting yet?
I'm waiting for chaos. It's truly what I'm waiting for when it comes to the Bulls. I am waiting for something crazy to happen between now and, let's say, the 4th of July, right? Because NBA free agency technically opens today. There's going to be plenty of moves being made. There's rumblings and reports that they're supposedly interested in a guy like Dennis Schroeder, who can come in and be that new starting point guard, obviously with Lonzo Ball's uncertain future in terms of his health. They're so cap strapped right now that they almost have to do something dramatic in order to free up space in order to do things. It either has to be moving on from a player like Zach LaVine or moving on from a player like DeMar DeRozan, in my opinion. Two players that I very much love, especially DeMar. DeMar's my guy. He's been my guy since he was a Toronto Raptor. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when you're up against the cap and you're the Bulls and you need to do things, this team was below 500 last season. It's not like they're coming off a 3 or a 4 seed and, you're like, oh, we got to retinker and retool and go for it. I mean, this is a team in dire need of some things. So I don't know if they're going to sign that's necessarily a big ticket free agent. I think anything big that happens from the Bulls this weekend is via trades, maybe sign in trades in that sense. But they're going to have to free up some dollars. And I think they just need to change the dynamic of the team, because the definition of insanity is running it back twice and thinking results are going to be different than what they did last year. They have to do something. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm ready for the chaos. There is nothing more in this world I enjoy in the middle of the summer than free agency chaos in all the winter sports. It makes my day.
And speaking of chaos with the Bulls, Ron, what percentage would you give of AK and Mark Eversley trading Patrick Williams and or Kobe White? I believe both of them. I know Kobe White for sure is a restricted free agent, but give us a percentage from your vantage point of the chances are of the Bulls management trading Kobe White and or Patrick Williams.
I think it's very possible. I think it's highly likely. I would give it a better than 50% chance of at least one of them being moved. I think, unfortunately, it's going to take one of them being moved in order to truly improve this team, and not necessarily saying that they're bad players and they need to get them off the roster, but just from you got to match value with value. And there's going to be teams that see value in a young, I'll call him a swing guard because I know he can play the point, but we've seen Kobe play the 2 as well and thrive there. He took really big steps toward the end of last season, and, he's a player that should command some value, especially in a move with maybe a Zach LaVine or maybe a DeMar DeRozan, especially if a 3-team trade becomes available. And P will too. I think it's so easy. And I tell myself this too, as a Bulls fan, it's so easy to get pissed off with P Will and, he's not doing things right. And the dude can barely legally drink in the United States right now. He's so it's trying to, it's trying to tell yourself there's the opportunity for him to still develop. And I think that ultimately with P Will potentially being moved comes down to, do the Bulls think they're contending this year or next year, or the Bulls are willing to punt maybe 3 years down the road to truly being legitimate contenders? Because if that's the case, I think P Will stays. If it's not, I think they try to capitalize on his youth and his kind of raw potential still for some other team that's maybe a few years away and try to bring in a veteran that's ready to win now.
Talking to our new buddy Ron Luce from On Tap Sportsnet here on Second State Sports on Chicago, Lakina McGee, Sydney Brown with you now. Ron, I mean, I've been very vocal on Bulls Twitter for the whole rebuild thing. I mean, do you see the Bulls doing kind of trying to do a rebuild, or like you just said? I mean, are they going to try to maybe see if they can try to contend for the next couple years or whatever? What do you think?
What do I think they're going to do versus what I think they should do, I think are two different things, unfortunately. Right. I think they should rebuild because, unfortunately, this team really hasn't been able to do a whole lot in the sense of bringing in star veterans and turning them into quality players. As much as I think they should rebuild, I don't know if this front office or this organization in general, and it must be something to do with Jerry Reinsdorf owned teams, but they don't know how to develop talent. I mean, look at guys like Lauri Markkanen who leave and become really good players out in Utah. I mean, you look over the years, there's so many guys that failed in Chicago that at least became serviceable NBA players elsewhere. So I think they're going to try and be competitive again. I think that they have a chance in the East. Obviously, if I had to pick between the East and the West, the East is by far the weaker of the two conferences. But it's kind of at that point now where they're so middle ground. You can't be just good enough to get yourself out of the elite talent in the NBA drafts in the near future, even if you have picks, because they've just dealt away their entire future. Or you got to be good enough to make the playoffs. They're right now just in that I call it purgatory of the NBA. They're stuck in the middle. They're painfully average. They do just enough to sell tickets, and that's it. And it's like, if this team's really serious about winning, I think they should rebuild. I think they have the right front office people there to potentially rebuild. They did that with Denver, at least for Karnisovas, at least, and even Eversley in his time with Philly. I have a feeling that there's a little guy in the upper office that unfortunately owns the franchise that's going, hey, we need to compete this year. So go do what you got to do to make this team work. And I unfortunately think that's what they're going to try and do. And I don't think it's the right move, but it's just all the signs to me are pointing that they're just going to try and mix this thing up and then try to run it back and be competitive again in the Eastern Conference.
Of course, we all know being stuck in NBA hell, it really gets you nowhere. So we'll see what happens with the Bulls at the United Center come next year. As you mentioned, we'll see what they do as free agency opens up today. Let's switch over to baseball, because as many people know, and for those of you that don't know, Ron also hosts the Cubs on Tap, the pre and post game show, talking about the Chicago Cubs. And I watched some of your post game from last night, Ron, and I thought you were well on point. Me and Lakina talked about it during our first hour of our show. Of course, the Cubs are the 5 games out of the division right now. They start the series against the Cleveland Guardians at Wrigley Field today. Justice still goes on the mound. But we talked about the last series against the Philadelphia Phillies, of course. Some people may blame it on the jet lag a little bit, even though they did get Monday off. But I thought the Phillies came in here and just took it to the Cubs. They outplayed the Cubs at every facet of the game. Now, as far as the Cubs starting pitching, Drew Smalley didn't look good on Wednesday, but Cal Hendricks looked great last night, except for the third inning. And Jameson Taillon, I didn't think he looked that bad on Tuesday, but the offense for the Cubs just did not come through. If you're a Cubs fan, do you throw your hands up in the air right now, or just because the way the NL Central is, you still give them a fighting chance?
I think the way the NL Central is, you have to give them a fighting chance. I mean, the Cincinnati Reds, who were predicted to be the bottom feeders of the division this year, went on a 12-game winning streak, are now tied for first place. Like, that's just what the division is this year. It's not very good. The only division, in my opinion, in baseball that's worse is the other Central on the other side of the league in the AL. It's the two Centrals. They're the worst divisions in baseball. It's just the way it is. So, I really do think the Cubs, at least in terms of their bats, are really suffering from the 2 international flights in 4 days. I think that has tripped them out completely. I think the MLB failed both teams, truthfully, in terms of the scheduling around having to go 8 hours one way and 8 hours back the other way with incredible time difference. I mean, a 6-hour time difference between Chicago and London. I think that has thrown them off, at least in this series. I'm hoping now that we inch into the weekend, they've acclimated a little more and they can get back to playing some of the baseball that we saw them running into that London series we're playing, and sweeping the Pirates in 2 consecutive series, taking 2 out of 3 against the Baltimore Orioles and so forth. But I think they're still in it. You're getting, Drew Smiley, I think, was a blip on the radar on Wednesday, having a bad outing. He's been really good at home all season long. Kyle Hendricks has looked incredible since he's been back. Entering his start last night, he had a 1.40 ERA in his last 3 outings. Still is under 3 for the entire season. And then you have Steele and Stroman right now, who are probably going to be 2 of the 3 finalists for the NL Cy Young if things keep going the way that they're going right now. So this team's got a chance, and they've shown they can hit with the guys in this lineup. I think they just need to reacclimate to the time zone and honestly, last night they had opportunities to win. They still had 7 hits. You had 3 extra base hits throughout the course of those 7. They just could not drive in runners in scoring position. 1 for 10 last night with runners in scoring position. That's just not going to get the job done. I don't care how many guys you put on base. If you can't drive them in, it's never going to matter. So if they can get that solved, offense consistency has been their biggest thing all season long so far. If they can just play somewhat consistent offensively, 3 to 4 runs a game, that's all they need, really, with how the pitching's been. If they can do that, I think they absolutely still have a fighting chance. Plus, they got 4 games on the set with Milwaukee next week. Those could be a really big 4 games for both teams in the NL Central standings here in the near future.
Yeah, definitely. It could be a 4-game swing there. Let's talk about that other division for a second. I Sid's I'm sure he told you he's the White Sox fan over there. The 2 of us. What do you think about their chances? I know they split their series against the Angels, especially after Ohtani, does what he does for pretty much everybody. So what do you think of the Sox chances in the AL Central?
All it takes is them to have one significant run to be back in this division in the AL Central. Unfortunately, they're just lacking. And I don't even know how to necessarily quantify it. It feels like there's no energy in the ball club. I think that's the best way to put it, right? This team has consistently failed in terms of, developing their prospects. They had the high touted, names come in the forms of guys like Luce Robert. And I mean, Eloy just can't stay on the field. That's neither here nor there, but even guys like Yohan Moncada and even Andrew Vaughn, another guy that they rushed to the big leagues because they needed the talent on the roster. And, I mean, 2 really good games at the end of that Angels series. You put up 9 and 11 runs respectively. They're showing what they can do. I mean, Luis Roberts, arguably one of the hottest players in baseball right now. Nobody talks about him just because he plays for the White Sox. It's not a shot at the White Sox. It's just the nature of the beast in terms of national coverage. But he's been very good. And they're getting good pitching out of guys like Dylan Cease. Lucas Giolito had a great month of June. They really, need consistent pitching from guys like Lance Lynn. They need consistent pitching. They need guys to be healthy. I think that was the biggest thing. Any conversation I had with any of my friends that were White Sox fans, with the Sox on Tap guys here at On Tap Sportsnet, they had 5 rotation pieces that looked really good on paper, and all it was going to take was 1 or 2 of them to have a bad season or injury, and it was all going to go downhill because your first guy up in Davis Martin had TJ earlier this season, so he's gone. Now they might have to use 2 bullpen games against the A's this weekend just because of the state of that rotation. They don't have pitching depth. And I think that's what's ultimately going to hurt them. They're showing the offense can put up the runs when the bats are hot. I just don't know if they're going to have the consistent enough pitching outside of Giolito and Cease, who both might be gone at the trade deadline. Who knows? To potentially catch, the Twins and the Guardians in this division, because the Twins are the big money team in the AL Central, which feels so weird to say. And the Guardians are just the Guardians. Like there's a reason the Cubs poached Carter Hawkins. The Guardians are good for no reason every year with one of the lowest payrolls in baseball. So, and they're continuing to show it right now. They've caught the Twins in the division race, and it's a 2-horse race right now at the top of that division. Hopefully the Cubs can help out your White Sox, Sydney, this weekend and beat up on the Guardians a little bit. I need it for my own sanity. I think they need a lot of things to go right, and health to their pitching staff is certainly one of them right now in order to truly be competitive in the AL Central this year.
Of course, Pedro Grifol, the first-year manager for the White Sox, walked into a no-win situation. I think it's safe to say that the honeymoon is over. Of course, every manager, whether they're new or been a veteran for many years, their moves are going to get questioned. Of course, one of them for Pedro Grifol is putting Jake Berger at the 8th spot during that last game of the Seattle series. I didn't understand it. And of course, the way they're managing Tim Anderson's situation right now, I know he busted out a little bit yesterday, but he should have been on the IL personally, but that's neither here or there. But throughout the first half of the year, what grade would you give Mr. Grifol for his time in Chicago?
Is a D+ being nice? I feel like that's
I think so. Yeah. But I think it's fair.
I think it is fair. And you know what? And this is the thing. I think this is why I do enjoy when I do talk White Sox with my White Sox friends, because I don't have a blood affiliation to the team. So I can take a step back and look at it, and just for what it is. And it's not a manager problem. It's not a talent on the field problem. It's an organizational problem. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the organization failing itself. They can't develop the talent that they do get, because look at the Whites. They've had plenty of talent come through the doors in the course of just the last 20 years. Jose Abreu is probably one of the best first basemen the MLB's seen in the last 10 years. The only reason he didn't get talked about more is because he played for a team that operates like a small market in the White Sox. But you've got Luis Robert, who I sit here and I've told White Sox fans, I think he wins 2 MVPs before he retires. He's that good. I mean, he just needs to stay healthy, but he's that good of a player that on a competitive White Sox team, he's 100% the face of the franchise. They just don't know how to develop talent. And I think for that reason alone, it doesn't matter who you put in there. They could have done the exact same thing, in my opinion, with Ozzie Guillen this year, a guy that I was very fortunate enough to, I actually got to work with a little bit in one of my jobs when I was in college. Awesome guy, and I love his takes on the White Sox because he's brutally honest. But I think Ozzy walks into that situation and fails. Like you said, Sid, it's a no-win situation for whoever's managing this ball club right now, because they just refuse to give the manager the tools they need to win. And I think that kind of maybe is what's crazy is Tony La Russa got this team to win. I don't know. I know that's been a very sensitive subject, I know, in the land of the White Sox, but it really does go to show that I don't think this organization does enough to support their managers. That being said, though, I think Raffol could have done things better. I've had the same type of questions for David Ross at times this year as a Cubs fan, in terms of lineup construction and why Christopher Morel was batting 7th for so long, and finally they put him back up at 3. And the steam in my head has cooled a little bit, at least. But I think Raffol got put in a no-win situation, and for that he gets a no-win grade, which to me is a D+.
Oh, pretty. Oh, Ron's great on the curve there. Oh, okay. All right, no, Ron. Let's go to could be somewhat some good news here. Of course, you got the Bears. Bears gonna be starting training camp in about a month from now. Of course, we all thought all the moves and whatnot. Can Fields get a breakthrough season? And can the Bears contend in NFC North?
I think you asked the most important question to what this Bears season will be, and is that can Justin Fields take that 3rd-year leap as a quarterback? To me, that is what the season rests on, without a single question. That is what the season rests on. I don't think they're done adding, truthfully. I think once training camp comes and you start to see some of those veteran cuts occur in training camp, especially on the defensive line, which is clearly the one position group that they've neglected the most. I would say offensive line might be the second most neglected on the team, even though, yes, they acquired Nate Davis and they, drafted Darnell Wright. I think they'll find ways to add depth there when they can. But to me, if Fields plays like Fields did last year, this team wins 7 games. If Fields takes that 3rd-year leap that we're all hoping he does, this team absolutely can win the NFC North. The NFC North, I think, is going to be a horrendous division this year. I don't think the Vikings are that good. They had to get rid of things in terms of key players. Zadarius Smith was one of the guys that they had to trade, among others that they've had to move. And they were also the worst 13-win team I've seen in my entire life last season. They had a negative point differential. I've never seen that in my entire life. And then on top of that, I think Detroit's going to be the team to beat, truthfully, but I see a world where Detroit wins 9 games. So the Bears realistically could be in the hunt for most of the season for the NFC North. I think the team up north is going to get a good reality check, and they certainly need it because they've had 20 years of bliss and they don't understand pain as a football fan. But I really do think that as long as Justin Fields takes that leap and we see those noticeable strides, mostly as a passer, and we saw it at times, he can absolutely throw the football. There's no question there. I think the additions of the talent, having a consistent option like DJ Moore on the outside, hopefully 2 healthy forms of Darnell Mooney and whatever you get out of a guy like Chase Claypool, maybe an ascension from a youngster like Scott, who they took in the 5th round out of Cincinnati. And then you have Robert Tonyan, who thrived in that Green Bay offense under Getsy, and Cole Kmet, who had a very good season last year, despite, terrible offensive numbers in totality. I absolutely think they can win the NFC North, but the biggest what if is, does Justin take that 3rd-year leap as a quarterback?
We're wrapping up with our new friend of the show, Mr. Ron Luce of On Tap Sportsnet, right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakina here with you. Ron, last question from me. Of course, I've been following you guys for the last few years at On Tap Sportsnet. You and your great contributors. We had Brad Buzz Squires on our podcast a couple of years ago. He's been great. I know you guys have been making some moves too over the last couple of years or so. Tell us how did you get started and where's your future of On Tap Sportsnet going?
Yeah, we got started. Long story short, I met Tony Marchese, who is our owner and as we call him, the El Prez of the group. I met him and we started up with another guy. We met Buzz and Juice, and On Tap was formed back in 2019, April 2019. Tax Day, ironically, is our official anniversary. And yeah, ever since then we've been growing. We've been trying to take this thing as far as we can. We cover all the major teams. We try to do our best covering some of the smaller teams in the city as well. And hopefully the ascension continues. And I know for some of the teams that I help do coverage for, obviously I'm on the Bears on Tap podcast. I help manage the Cubs on Tap podcast, and then obviously Four Feathers. We actually just did a Four Feathers show before I jumped on with you guys. All three teams have been fun now, and they're starting that ascension into what's hopefully contention in the near future. We've kind of been robbed as an overall organization, because in the last 4 years, Chicago sports really haven't been that great. The Cubs, fell apart in 2019, and then the big sell-off. The Hawks have been bad. The Bulls had the 1 year of bliss, and then they've fallen off. The Sox had their 1 year of bliss and fallen off. So, and
that seemed like 20 years ago.
I know, right? It feels like forever ago. I think for us, we're all just craving good sports in Chicago, because I think we've been a little robbed over the last 4 years of that. So hopefully now is not only a new era in some of the Chicago sports teams like we discussed with the Blackhawks, but hopefully a new era in On Tap Sportsnet as well. And we're looking forward to taking this thing as far as it'll take us.
Awesome. Wish you nothing but great success. And thank you so much for joining us today, Ron. Where people can find your stuff, your contributor stuff, and on YouTube, on social media, all that other great stuff.
Yeah, you can find me personally at Luce on Tap. I'm most active on Twitter. You can find all of us at On Tap Sportsnet is our overall entity name. OnTapSportsnet.com is where you can find all of our writings and podcasts. You can also follow our YouTube channel and Facebook pages. That's where we do all of our live shows through for everything. Sox on Tap, Four Feathers, Cubs on Tap, Bears on Tap, Bulls on Tap, etc. OnTapSportsnet.com and at On Tap Sportsnet on social media is where you can find all of our great work.
All right, Ron, thank you very much for joining us today and making your debut right here on Second City Sports. As Lakina said, much continued success. We'll definitely have you back here on this program again very soon, but perhaps during the fall, during the Bears season, whether it's good, whether it's bad, or in between. This upcoming Bears season should be interesting, to say the least. So we'd like to have you back to talk Bears.
Hey, I would love to come back. I'm always happy to join you guys. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Have a great holiday weekend,
Thanks, Ron.
okay?
You too. Take care, both.
All right.
Thanks, Ron. Stay safe. All right, that was Ron Luce from OnTapSportsNet.com. Of course, you can follow all his stuff on OnTapSportsNet.com. So, yeah, all the stuff's right there. Like I said, we're definitely going to have him back on now. All right, so we got to take a 2 and 2, as they say. Take a little bit of a beat here. I know, right? A little stretching. So, but after the break, massive layoffs over at ESPN. Some big names will let go today, we'll tell you. And also, too, on the good side, though, a future Hall of Fame defensive end has picked a place where he's going to be doing his to start his broadcast career. All that and a whole lot more. Lakina McGee, Cindy Brown, Second City Sports on Sports Show Chicago. We'll wrap things up coming up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class. These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to the last break of the show for today and for this long holiday weekend. You're listening to the Friday edition of Second City Sports right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow Makina McGee on the Twitter, and Makina's going to get on the IG.
Okay, we got less than 25 minutes left of this extravaganza we call the Sports Talk Radio Show. So you want to get those last minute questions or comments into us, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. And just a daily reminder, especially during this long holiday weekend for many of you, you can get Sports Zone Chicago now available on Roku TV.
Yes, and now you get the time to, if you got the 4 or your 5 day weekend in some cases, you can catch up on all your episodes of our show and all the other shows right here on Sports Zone Chicago. So it's all right there for you.
Yes. Lakina, let's get into some sports media news. You teased it before the break. ESPN has been having massive layoffs for the past year. They had one earlier this year, and now, unfortunately, for this holiday weekend, they have they had another massive layoff. Of course, with 20 names, most of them on-air talent, and some of the names that have been released have included Matt Hasselbeck, Tom McShay, which is another shocking one that just came down the pipeline a few minutes ago. Of course, Susie Colbert, Steve Young, Lavanso Ellis, the college basketball analyst, and of course, Keyshawn Johnson, Max Kellerman. Perhaps Jay Williams was not on that list, but he's in flux right now. Of course, Jalen Rose and Jeff Van Gundy from the NBA coverage, all of them have been let go due to these massive layoffs. Of course, these layoffs are occurring because of the cutting the cord from many subscribers. And then as we talked about before, they go into streaming. They are on folks that want their own shows, watch what they want, when they want it. They want to stream. They don't want to pay for cable anymore. And the way we view our live sports and just television in general is changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's unfortunate, too, like you said, amongst other names, also, too, ESPN is also unlikely. This is according to Mike McCarthy from Front Office Sports, that Vince Carter's contract will expire in September, will probably very likely not be renewed. Also to Steve Young as well, and Susie Colbert, who's been there like 27 years. I remember growing up watching her, growing up, as when ESPN2 was first a thing. So a little bit surprising with some of the names, but again, we'll keep you guys updated in case there are going to be more names available. But yeah, I mean, some were not surprised. I mean, they got rid of they canceled Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max. You thought that Max Kellerman was going to be let go, of course, especially with Pat McAfee taking over that slot. We knew that Keyshawn was expendable. So I'm guessing this is the case here. Tom McShay, I'm a little surprised by, since he's sort of like the top, draft expert, if you will. So I'm a little surprised that he got let go. Jason Fitz from ESPN Radio, who's been there for I think like almost a decade. He's been let go too on the ESPN Radio side. So yeah, some of the layoffs. I mean, I'm going to keep my little personal opinions to myself because I think there should be some other folks' names that should be on the list, but they probably won't be. So I'm not gonna.
Right, we'll leave that alone. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing this
now.
morning, but I'm not going to bring that to the airways.
No, we're not. So this is about the folks that have been let go. So yeah, so if you feel for a lot of those people, you got to think, assuming that some of the people might. I'm sure they're going to land elsewhere. I mean, Alfonso Ellis, a guy that's been there, I think, like almost 12 years doing college hoops. I'm sure. CBS and Fox will probably, be mine for his services too. It's just that some of these guys probably going. Of course, you can look Skip Bayless. You look for somebody to for his Fox show. You got to think. There's two potential candidates right there. You got Max Kellerman and Jalen Rose, and even Keyshawn. So you got a couple of names right there that could probably have to fill that slot. So it's a little weird that how a lot of this has changed in the last few years. I mean. You thought that maybe ESPN, working there would be the end-all, be-all, but with all these layoffs, especially in the last few years, especially today, you feel for a lot of these people because all of them are very talented. I'm sure most of them will probably land on their feet should they continue to, to pursue it. But yeah, it's a little shocking. So this is a dark day for ESPN today.
I have two angles on this, Lakina. You brought the first one up, so I'll do that first. Regarding with Skip Bayless and Fox, of course, Shannon Sharp left the show following the NBA Finals. It looks like he may have his own show soon, so we'll stay tuned for that and we'll talk about it. But as far as the show Undisputed, like you say, he has some candidates. I think it's going to come down to the final two, in my opinion, if they want to do it. And that's Jalen Rose and Keyshawn Johnson. You need star power to go along with Skip Bayless for that quality of that show. Both of them can talk other sports besides basketball. Remember, Keyshawn was doing, of course, with the radio show, both locally in Los Angeles, of course, nationally these last few years with Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max. Jalen Rose, he was one of the original co-hosts to Get Up with Mike Greenberg and Michelle Beadle. Of course, they changed up that show. Of course, it's now the Mike Greenberg Show. Get Up, we all know what that is. But Jalen Rose also did a show with now I think still ex-ESPN or David Jacoby with Jalen Jacoby. They talked about other sports as well. Of course, it was mainly surrounded by basketball, but they talked about other sports as well. So I think that Skip Bayless you cannot lose in this situation if both of them want to do. I'm talking about Keyshawn Johnson and Jalen Rose if they want to go over the Fox and do Undisputed. And plus, with Fox Sports 1's NBA coverage, Chris Broussard, I think he's still the main analyst over there, but he has First Things First. And, of course, he has the Odd Couple radio show at night, so they don't use him as much outside those two daily shows he has to do. But the only other guy they use as far as the NBA expert is concerned in terms of across their radio and TV platforms is Rick Buger, who does a darn good job. But if they can convince to get Jalen Rose over there, and you could use him besides just Undisputed, you could use him as far as talking NBA and perhaps getting his own podcast started over there as well.
Yeah, look, I know Fox is having their various issues as well. So, that could be something that they may look into. We'll see. I mean, seeing some of the names, I mean, I think you feel for some of these folks because, like you said, they've been there for, at least in some cases, like over a decade. So it's a little bit disconcerting that some of these people are, of course, you get, Susie Carver, who's been there 27 years. I know that I think, Steve Young's been there, I think, like 18 years or something like that. So you feel for those folks, because of the fact that I know Ashley Brewer, who was a rising star there, you thought that maybe you're a little surprised that she got the boot. But, June Lee, who is a popular baseball blogger, if you will, for ESPN.com, he was also let go too. So it's not just on the on-air side, it's also on the little bit on the columnist side as well. So it's a little bit, it is a sort of definitely a sad day for for that network. And we'll see if some of these people decide to go somewhere else.
Here's the second angle I'll bring to you right now. Of course, I'm in a group chat with the guys from the old Dean Davis show from back in the day. I forgot who brought this up. I think it was Kyle Means, our teammate at Warm Media. Don't forget the NBA rights, national TV rights is up in a couple of years. And if you read the reports, and we'll bring this in a little bit now, that NBC has been heavily involved. The reports, if you read the reports the last couple of days, they really want the NBA back. And some of those guys that were let go, especially from the NBA side with Jeff Van Gundy and Jalen Rose, especially if Jalen Rose decides not to go to Fox for whatever reason, you can sit out a year or two, and if NBC gets the rights to the NBA, you can bring him along. You can bring Jeff Van Gundy along to perhaps relaunch the new NBA on NBC should they get the rights from the NBA.
Yeah, I think that's something that could be something that they might be thinking about too. So I think that's probably for some of these cuts. So maybe that is something that they decide to do, especially if NBC, if they just get one game a week or probably like streaming on Peacock or whatever. So maybe they'll bring back the Round Ball Rock song, but it's sort of interesting. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think they could definitely see that happening. That should be interesting, especially if like I said, if NBC does get some NBA rights. I mean, there are some reports that maybe they may want to kind of cut back on their coverage a little bit, so that might pave the way for an NBC or an Amazon to perhaps maybe sneak in there. Of course, especially on the streaming side with Amazon, and of course NBC can stream their stuff through Peacock. So this is gonna get very. There's a lot of layers to this. It's gonna be very interesting to see what happens. But yeah, these next couple of years is gonna be interesting.
Yeah, as we said before regarding the NBA and the streaming rights and the fees, they're the only league out of the four major sports here in the United States that do not have a game exclusive rights streaming deal. Of course, that's going to change soon in the next couple of years. Well, if ESPN re-ups with the NBA, ESPN Plus, they're saying, well, we can put a couple of games on ESPN Plus per week. We could do that since we have it all right here. Or like you say, if NBC gets it, they can put them on Peacock as well. Of course, don't forget about Apple TV. You mentioned Amazon. Don't forget about Apple TV as well. Google TV, of course, they own YouTube TV. Of course, that's the new home for NFL Sunday Ticket starting this fall. So the NBA is going to have some options to put some of their games on streaming. No, they haven't had it yet, but in a couple of years, it's coming. For those of you that don't like it, I know there's some of you that don't, but it's coming, folks, for the NBA. It's coming.
Yeah, it is what it is. With that, speaking of streaming, NFL Network, this is actually personal to me because I have Uverse. We lost NFL Network a couple years ago when AT&T, for whatever reasons, decided to pull the network from there. But some good news, kind of came across the wires on Tuesday. Not only will an NFL Network will be back on AT&T Uverse, on Uverse, it's just Uverse now. Also, too, is it's deal with DirecTV as well. They're all the one conglomerate now. But also, too, we're gonna get NFL Red Zone with Scott Hansen. So, a little bit, some good news there. Those of you who have a choice package and above on DirecTV, and those of you who have Uverse 200. On Uverse, you'll get access to NFL Network. Also, if you get NFL Sunday Ticket, it'll be on the premier tier on Uverse, and the Sports Pack, of course, will be part of a separate package on DirecTV. So you'll still have a chance. And I think there are twofold this. I think they want to bring the NFL. I know the NFL was not very happy when then AT&T Uverse decided to pull NFL Network from them from that lineup. But also, too, with the glitches that are allegedly happened over YouTube TV, especially what happened with the NBA Finals, during the playoffs, I should say, NFL probably wants to cover their bases. So this is probably, I'm happy. I think it'll come in August, I believe, like early August, like right near halfway through the preseason. But this is good news for me personally.
Of course, I have Xfinity, so we went through this early last month. I know not too many people reported it at the time, but it was just for one day the NFL Network was blacked out on my cable set. But the next day, we're back with an agreement with the Xfinity. I was like, yes, thank goodness. Woo-hoo! And of course, you know me as well as when it comes to football, watching football. I love that red zone. I know Andrew Siciliano does the version for DirecTV, but Scott Hansen is the best doing it for the other versions. And of course, I have my game of the week on my computer, and of course, on the main screen, I have NFL Red Zone. And sometimes for the other games, I'll put Red Zone on the computer and the other games via my television screen. So NFL Sundays is not complete unless I have Red Zone. Of course, as we talked about before. people watch their sports in various ways. They watch their sports through various streams, and especially when football season comes along. Of course, you have all the early games on Sundays at 12 noon Chicago time. Of course, you have a few games slotted in the late afternoons. Of course, you watch one game on the big screen, you watch some others via your phone or your laptop, like I'm doing our show right now. And so with the NFL, those eyeballs are sticking to those screens, whether it's your television, your phone, or your laptop. The NFL is changing, so get ready for that. As Lakina talked about, now the NFL is on Universe NFL Network's back on Universe TV. Of course, you're listening to Second City Sports and Sports on Chicago City. The kid here riding solo dolo for the moment. Of course, hopefully Lakina will rejoin us before we close up shop for today. But here's some breaking news just coming in right now via Twitter. This is the NBA Central from their Twitter account. According to Jake L. Fisher from Yahoo Sports, he says, and I quote from reading directly from his tweet here from NBA Central, the Bulls could emerge as potential destination for James Harden, Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan are the names to monitor. Quote, Chicago would be one potential trade partner to keep in mind, as the Bulls had made Zach LaVine available in conversations this offseason, sources said, and could also send an all-star such as DeMar DeRozan back to Philadelphia. I want to ask Bulls fans and those out there listening and watching us right here on Sports on Chicago's Facebook page or Sports on Chicago on YouTube. I want to ask you guys this, and you can type in your answers in the comment section. Would you welcome James Harden into the city of Chicago should the Bulls get this deal done? As we had our guest on from our last break, Mr. Ron Luce from On Time Sportsnet. The plan is simple. If the Bulls want to make some free agency moves, make some big splashes, they're going to have to trade one of the big three guys, and Nikolai Vucevic, who they just re-signed the other day. Of course, Zach LaVine, who they signed around this time last summer. Of course, DeMar DeRozan, his contract is gold right now because he has 1 year left, and he's going to be a free agent next summer. Would you welcome James Harden to the city of Chicago? Me personally, is a bold move for the Chicago Bulls, but let's be honest here. James Harden is still a good offensive player, but he doesn't bring it defensively. He can score with the best of them. He's one of the best scorers in the game today, one of the best in his era during his time. But I don't think right now that you need more than James Harden for this Bulls team to get back into playoff contention and to get back into championship form. I think it will be a start, but I don't know if that's a good idea to bring James Harden in. His game transcends to the regular season. He's great during the regular season, but during the playoffs, as we talked about before, as Lakina rejoins me now, as James Harden, as the playoffs always begins, James Harden usually disappears in the playoffs, and I'm not sure that it's going to work, especially for those Bulls team. As Lakina rejoins me again, of course, I'm reading the tweet that just came out about 20 minutes ago, courtesy of NBA Central and i.e. Jake Fisher's report from Yahoo Sports. James Harden, one of his destinations could include the Chicago Bulls. Names potential being mentioned in a trade, Lakina, potentially to the Bulls, Zach LaVine and or DeMar DeRozan, according to sources.
Is Jake talking to the concession folks over at the UC again? Because I feel like this is sort of like worse than worse. I mean, you really think that James Harden's going to fit in Billy Donovan's system? I mean, it kind of feels like, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of skeptical of it happening. I mean, it's just like, I think there are other places where he could go to win it. You know, this Bulls team is not, ready for a championship just yet. So he's going to want to go someplace where they're winning. And I think that's not going to be the case here. So we'll see what happens with that. But like I said, I just don't see that part of it happening. Look, we've seen like crazy things happen, free agency so far, but I just don't see it. But we'll see.
Yeah, like I said before you rejoined me, I get it as a start, but if it's just James Harden and a bunch of other role players, it's not going to get it done. He's not young anymore. He's still a very good player. He's at the twilight of his career, but you cannot ask him to carry a franchise, especially a franchise like the Bulls.
It's not going to happen, so I just don't see it happening. Now, let's go back to sports media news for a second here. J.J. Watt made the announcement himself on Wednesday. You actually had the wrong hat on. You actually had a CBS hat instead of saying CBS, which is pretty funny. I know he made a joke about that. Yeah, he's going to be joining CBS Sports during their NFL Today coverage. Of course, he'll join Of course, JB, Boomer, Nate Burleson, Phil Sims, and of course, Coach Cower. I think it's going to be a great, especially with CBS having the Super Bowl this year. I think this is definitely having someone of JJ Watt's ilk, someone who just freshly retired and everything else. I think he's definitely going to be the guy that can kind of help with sort of like bridging that gap between. I know Burleson's still good, but he's been out of the game for a while. He just retired. I'm talking about JJ Watt. So very excited for this move for CBS. I think he had his offer from other places. I mean, I know NFL Network really wanted him. I know NBC wanted him for their Big Ten of football coverage. Of course, he's a two-time All Big Tenner from Wisconsin. So, but yeah, I think this is probably the best move for him, and he probably will do it every single week. But he is going to be part of. I'm sure they'll work it out as it goes on. But yeah, it should be interesting though to see what happens there.
As we mentioned with JJ Watt, he has that it factor. Not everyone has that. Of course, he played the game. Like you said, you need some fresh ideas, some fresh thoughts of how to talk about NFL football. Of course, he was one of the big personalities in the game when he played. So I think that transition is going to take time, but I don't think it's going to be too much of a rough landing for JJ Watt. I think it's going to be fine. Don't forget they have Matt Ryan over there as well. So it's nice to see some new, fresh faces and some new thought and new ideas for a while. We get used to having our favorite personalities talk whatever sports or whatever topics they are expertise on. But sometimes you need new voices and new faces, and I think JJ Watt and Matt Ryan for CBS will do that.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting, especially with Matt Ryan. We'll see how, what's going to be the order for the CBS NFL coverage. Because remember, Tiki Barber's going to be doing a full season 2 this year, as well as some more news that kind of came across the pike earlier this week. So it'll be interesting to see how it's going to be shuffling, especially with Greg Gumbel now no longer doing it. So that's good. Just see some little bit of shuffling going on over there at CBS Sports and the NFL coverage. I hope our buddy Spiro Diaz gets a full season. You would
think, like you said, since Grant Gumbel, Chicago's very young, is retiring from doing NFL football. You would think, because CBS has been good for moving up people. I know what's his face now is the voice of college basketball, Ian Eagle. Of course, he still does TV for the Brooklyn Nets, and of course, he does some gigs here and there for NBA TV / Turner Sports. So he's finally getting his chance. Of course, you would think that Spiro Diaz, he does multiple sports as well, of course, with not only football, but the NBA as well. So you would think they'll move him up for this upcoming season. I hope that happens.
Yeah, I do too, because he definitely deserves it, and he has paid his dues. Also, too, it's going to be interesting to see who they pair Matt Ryan up with, but also Tiki as well. So it'll be interesting to see since they're both going to be doing, doing full seasons. It'll be interesting to see who they pair him up with, and we'll see if Tony Romo's on the hot seat. Because remember, it came out that of course the execs had to kind of give him a little bit of a talking to, because he hasn't been prepared really. So that's another thing they're going to have to be looking out for, because you got Charles Davis, who's really good, waiting in the wings. So at number 2 spot. So we'll see.
Yeah, like you say, he's in the number 2 spot with the Iron Eagle. So like you said, that this is the big year for CBS. They have the Super Bowl this year. So things still shape out the way they want to be. Like you said, especially in this industry, the changes come and they come quickly.
Absolutely. So any other media news you wanted to tackle before we wrap it up?
I want to get your thoughts quickly about the NFL suspended 4 players due to gambling. Of course, now all 4 of these professional leagues, of course, NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA, they're involved with these gambling leagues with DraftKings and FanDuel. For the NFL, just to make a long story short, they promote gambling. You just cannot gamble within their premises, i.e. the practice field or the actual stadiums that you play in during on game days. But the NFL is going to have to make it clear on what you should and should not do, and as far as gambling, because you can only police players for so long if they're on your facilities. But this is kind of confusing to me. The NFL's got to hash out the gambling policies and make it very clear to these players and coaches when or when not to gamble. If you tell them just simply not to gamble on NFL premises, cool. But if this has some other innuendo in there that people don't understand, it's going to cause problems.
I mean, Jesus, it's pretty simple, right? I mean, it's actually not that hard. I mean, you would think that maybe the rules say that, hey, look, you can do this and this and this, but you can't do it, there. So it's not really rocket science. So it's hard to believe that there are players that either can't do it or don't want to do it or thought they couldn't get caught doing it. So it's just like interesting because the whole thing with all the suspensions in the NFL, gambling suspensions and such. You got, of course, everyone thought that maybe you knew that there were gonna be guys that got caught. Of course, Calvin really got caught last year. Isaiah Rodgers, among others, they were caught this year, and a few other players were suspended. So it's just like, hopefully this will give people. I know that some players have blasted. I know Jonathan Jones from the Patriots, he blasts the suspensions, but you want to keep the integrity of the league, in that aspect of it down. So you don't want to, be questioning, the integrity of it, because guys are gambling on it. You just don't want that to happen. And I think not just the NFL, but none of the sports want to have that stain. So I'm sure
exactly
NFL will probably start putting their foot down, I think.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that situation. On that note, Lakina, it's been a great show right here on Second City Sports, the Friday edition, the extended holiday edition of Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. We'd like to thank Mr. Ron Luce from On Tap Sportsnet for joining us here today. We're talking all things Chicago sports. Go to ontapsportsnet.com to check out his work along with his other bandmates, and we're going to have him back on this program again in the future, especially come Bear season. It's going to be an interesting season, football season, to say the least.
You can follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan_McGee on the IG. Of course, you can catch this show, Second City Sports, every Monday, except for this Monday because we're going to be off for the July 4th holiday, and every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on Sports of Chicago on our Facebook and YouTube pages.
And don't forget, we'll be back on Wednesday. Since we won't be here on Monday, we'll be back for a special edition of Second City Sports on Wednesday. So you're going to get us twice, not quite back-to-back days, but you know what we mean. So we won't be here with you guys on Monday as we're enjoying the holiday weekend with the rest of you guys, but we'll be back on Wednesday at 12 noon Central Standard Time right here on Sports Zone Chicago. So put in your memory banks in your phones, Second City Sports, next Wednesday and Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on Sports Zone Chicago. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80, SIDKID80, SIDKID80. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can subscribe to our podcast at War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. More Media Podcast. We're available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And give War Media a follow at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
All right, Lakina, take us home.
All right, and don't forget, you can catch Sports Zone Chicago anytime you want on Roku TV. Of course, if you got the Roku TV stick or you got the Roku TV app, anywhere on your whatever device you got, just type in Sports Zone Chicago, catch our show, Sean and Maya, the Smoke Fellas, anytime, anywhere. And yeah, like I said, it's all right there for you. Spend this holiday weekend catching up on the episodes, because they're all right there for you.
Yes, no excuses. Oh, real quick before we head out for this weekend, Lakina, let's give a big congratulations and a big clap it up to our boss, Sean Sierra. He made his debut on the NBC Sports Chicago football night in Chicago on Thursday with our guy, Kenneth Davis from the Under Center podcast. And, of course, his independent show, That Davis Show, you can catch right here on YouTube. Sean Sierra made his debut last night. If you missed it, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, NBC Sports Chicago, and catch the latest of the Thursday episode of Football Night in Chicago. He and Ken Davis, as the kids would say, chopped it up about the Chicago Bears and the NFL. Great conversation there.
Yeah, so you make sure you guys check that out. Also, want to give another shout out to the LSU Tigers men's baseball team. They win their, I believe this is their 5th national championship, just hammering Florida in that decider. I think it's like 13 runs or something like that. So they've been kind of they've been right there for the last couple of years. So it's nice to see them back winning again. So that was a fun men's college World Series, if you will. So enjoy the barbecues or whatever you guys got planned. Don't be safe with those firecrackers, folks. Don't make sure don't do any other things stupid this holidays weekend. So for Sid, I'm the Kansas Business Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago, folks. Stay safe, and we'll see you Wednesday.
Go Sox! Holla!